The recruitment hall buzzed with the kind of nervous energy that only came before something monumentally stupid was about to happen. Captain Zara Chen stood in line behind a 7-foot-tall Korthak warrior, whose muscles had muscles, and in front of a crystalline being that looked like it could shatter mountains with a thought. She checked her watch for the 15th time in 3 minutes. Next, the processing officer's voice cut through the chatter, like a plasma blade through butter. Zara stepped forward, her boots clicking against the polished metal floor. The officer, a slug-like mollusk with eyes that had seen too much bureaucracy, looked up from his datapad with all the enthusiasm of a dying star. Name! Captain Zara Chen, Terran Defense Corps, retired. She handed over her credentials with practiced precision. The slug's eye stalks twitched as he scanned the documents. Human. Interesting. We don't get many of your species applying for the Galactic Combat Division. First time for everything, Zara replied, her voice carrying just enough edge to make the officer's slime glisten uncomfortably. Physical stats show your average height, average build, no apparent enhancements. Combat experience limited to your home system conflicts. He set down the datapad with a wet slap. Tell me, human, what makes you think you can survive alongside beings who could snap you like a twig? Zara's smile was sharp as broken glass. Maybe they should worry about surviving alongside me. The officer's laugh sounded like drowning in pudding. Right. Processing complete. Report to Barracks 7. Try not to get crushed on your first day. As Zara walked away, she could hear him muttering to his assistant about humans and their delusions of adequacy. She filed that comment away for future reference. The universe had taught her that revenge was a dish best served with side of public humiliation. Barracks 7 turned out to be a cathedral of testosterone and alien machismo. Beings from across the galaxy had gathered to prove their worth in the most elite fighting force known to sentient life. The air crackled with challenge and barely contained violence. Zara's entrance caused exactly the reaction she'd expected. Conversations died like unpaid subscriptions. 100 different types of eyes focused on her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright contempt. Well. The voice belonged to Grix, a Vorthan whose scales gleamed like liquid mercury. His reputation preceded him like a bad smell. What do we have here? Did someone order takeout? Laughter rippled through the barracks, the sound sharp and predatory. Zara set her gear down on the nearest empty bunk and began unpacking with deliberate calm. Hey, little human. A creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a tank stepped forward. His name tag read Crex in standard script. You sure you're in the right place? The civilian quarters are 3 levels down. More laughter. Zara continued folding her clothes with mathematical precision. Maybe she's lost, suggested another voice. This one came from Vera, a female Zentori whose idea of subtlety was a plasma cannon to the face. Should we call her a cab home? The crowd was warming up now, feeding off each other's energy like parasites at a comedy club. Zara finished unpacking and turned to face them, her expression neutral as a negotiating table. Done with the comedy hour? She asked pleasantly. Because I'd hate to interrupt your careers as professional idiots. The laughter died faster than hope in a tax office. Grix stepped closer, his scales shifting to a darker shade that meant business. You got some nerve, human, but nerve won't save you when the real fighting starts. Neither will talking, Zara replied, not backing down an inch. But please continue. I'm taking notes from my memoir, How to Spot Insecurity from a Million Light Years Away. The tension in the room could have been cut with a butter knife and served at dinner. Several beings cracked their knuckles or the equivalent thereof in the universal language of impending violence. That's when the door exploded, not figuratively, literally. The reinforced metal barrier that had been keeping the outside world at bay suddenly wasn't there anymore, replaced by twisted wreckage and the acrid smell of high-grade explosives. Through the smoke stepped something that made every warrior in the room reconsider their life choices. It stood 12 feet tall, covered in biomechanical armor that seemed to absorb light itself. Red optical sensors swept the room like searchlights from hell. The creature's designation was whispered in nightmares across the galaxy. Nexus Class Battle Android, Mark 7. Oh, fantastic, Grix muttered. A training bot. This should be interesting. The android's head turned with mechanical precision to focus on the Vorthan. Identify combat objectives. Grix looked around the room like he was searching for an exit that didn't involve dying. We're all combat objectives, I guess. Acknowledge. Initiating combat protocols. What happened next could only be described as a masterclass in control violence. The android moved like liquid death, its massive frame somehow achieving grace that would make dancers weep. Grix launched himself forward with typical Vorthan aggression and found himself airborne approximately 2 seconds later, courtesy of an uppercut that violated several laws of physics. Krex charged with the subtlety of a falling asteroid. The android caught him mid-charge, spun him around 3 times, and deposited him gently into a wall that had previously been solid. The crystalline being tried to use its natural hardness as an advantage. The android demonstrated that everything was fragile when you hit it hard enough. One by one, the Barracks elite warriors found themselves redecorated as part of the landscape. The android moved through them like a hot knife through butter that was also on fire. Zara watched the carnage with professional interest, making mental notes about combat patterns and reaction times. When the android's sensors finally locked onto her, she didn't flinch. Identify yourself, small organic. Captain Zara Chen, she replied calmly. And you're making a mess of my new home. The android tilted its head with mechanical curiosity. You do not flee. Should I? Most organics exhibit fear responses when confronted with superior combat units. Zara shrugged. I'm not most organics. The android studied her for a long moment that felt like several geological ages. Around them, the groans and whimpers of defeated warriors provided background music. Initiate combat assessment, the android announced, raising one massive fist. Hold that thought, Zara said, raising her hand. To everyone's amazement, including her own, the android actually paused. Before we dance, mind if I ask you something? Query accepted. Your combat algorithms. They're based on threat assessment, right? Biggest, strongest, most obviously dangerous targets first. Affirmative. And how's that working out for you? The android looked around the barracks at the scattered, groaning forms of supposedly elite warriors. If a machine could look puzzled, this one was achieving it. Combat effectiveness is within acceptable parameters. Is it though? Zara stepped closer, and incredibly, the android let her. Because from where I'm standing, you just spent a lot of energy defeating opponents who pose no real strategic threat. Meanwhile, the person who could actually cause you problems has been standing right here, analyzing your every move. The android's optical sensors focused on her with laser intensity. Explain. Combat isn't just about strength or speed or fancy armor, Zara said, circling the mechanical giant like a shark with good manners. It's about understanding your opponent, knowing what they're going to do before they do it. And right now, I know exactly what you're going to do. Demonstrate. The android's arm shot forward in a punch that could have liquefied a small building. Zara wasn't there anymore. She'd rolled left, come up behind its knee, and delivered a precise strike to a joint that looked suspiciously like a weak point. The android's leg locked up with a grinding sound that suggested expensive repairs. Your designers gave you incredible strength and speed, Zara said, dancing away from a retaliatory swipe. But they also gave you predictable programming. You telegraph every move like you're sending a formal invitation. She slipped under another attack, this time targeting a different joint. Another grinding sound, another lock limb. Combat algorithms adapting, the android announced, but there was something different in its voice now. Uncertainty, maybe, or the machine equivalent of concern. Too little, too late, Zara replied. She'd found the pattern now, the rhythm of its movements. Every combat system had weaknesses, and this one's was its reliance on overwhelming force over tactical thinking. The next 5 minutes were a clinic in applied physics and creative violence. Zara moved like water around the android's increasingly desperate attacks, each strike precisely targeted, each movement calculated to maximize damage while minimizing risk. When the smoke cleared, literally and figuratively, the Nexus-class battle android was on its knees, multiple systems offline, optical sensors flickering with what might have been confusion. Combat assessment complete. It said in a voice that sounded almost subdued. Opponent designation, extremely dangerous. The barracks had fallen completely silent. 47 elite warriors from across the galaxy stared at the small human who had just done the impossible. Zara wiped a trickle of sweat from her forehead and looked around the room. Anyone else have questions about whether I belong here? The silence stretched like taffy in a centrifuge. Excellent, she said, turning back to her bunk. I'm glad we got that settled. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have gear to organize and a reputation to maintain. As she began arranging her belongings, the android spoke again, its voice filled with something that sounded suspiciously like respect. Captain Chen. Yes. Would you accept designation as combat instructor? Zara paused in her unpacking and looked back at the mechanical warrior. Around the barracks, beings who had been mocking her minutes earlier watched with expressions ranging from awe to terror. I'll consider it, she said finally. But first, you're going to help me finish setting up my bunk. And then you're going to explain to everyone here why underestimating humans is a mistake they should never make again. Acknowledge. Task parameters accepted. As the 12-foot killing machine carefully helped arrange her pillow, Zara allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes the universe provided exactly the right kind of irony at exactly the right moment. The real fun, she knew, was just beginning. They laughed at the human recruit until the apex predator took orders from her. Part 2. 3 weeks had passed since the incident that the barracks now referred to as the Humbling. The Nexus android, who had somehow acquired the nickname Rex from a human who defeated it, had become Zara's shadow and unofficial bodyguard. This development had created what military strategists might call interesting dynamics. Commander Thane, a battle-scarred Krolix with more cybernetic implants than original parts, stood before the assembled recruits in the main training hall. His one remaining organic, I swept over him like a scanner, looking for defects. Today marks your final evaluation, he announced, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 battlefield decisions. You will face the Crimson Trials. Most of you will fail. Some of you will break. A few might even survive with your dignity intact. Nervous laughter rippled through the ranks. Zara noticed that none of it came from anywhere near her position. Word spread about the human who made apex predators ask politely. The trials consist of 3 phases. Thane continued. Individual combat assessment, tactical problem solving, and team coordination under extreme stress. Your performance will determine not just your graduation, but your assignment within the Galactic Combat Division. Grix, whose scales had never quite returned to their original shine after his encounter with Rex, raised a clawed hand. Commander, what about the android situation? All eyes turned to Rex, who stood perfectly motionless beside Zara like a 12-foot statue of barely contained violence. The machine had been following her orders without question, much to everyone's confusion and growing concern. The Nexus unit will participate as designed, Thane replied, as your final opponent. The collective intake of breath could have powered a small atmospheric processor. However, the commander continued with what might have been amusement. Recent events have necessitated certain adjustments to the standard protocol. Zara felt a familiar tingle of anticipation. The universe was about to become interesting again. Phase 1 began immediately. Individual combat assessments meant facing progressively more dangerous opponents until you either won, lost, or achieved something resembling mutual destruction. Zara watched as her fellow recruits took their turns. Krex demolished 3 successive opponents before meeting his match against a phantom ray that moved like liquid shadow. Vera's plasma-based attacks proved devastatingly effective until she faced an opponent with adaptive shielding. One by one, the galaxy's finest warriors found their limits. When Zara's name was called, the arena fell silent. Her first opponent was a Razor Mantis, 8 feet of chitinous armor and surgical precision. It approached her with the confidence of something that had never met defeat. Ready to dance? Zara asked pleasantly. The Mantis responded by launching itself forward with blades extended. Zara sidestepped, grabbed its leading arm, and used its own momentum to introduce it to the arena floor with prejudice. The fight lasted exactly 7 seconds. Her second opponent was a Void Walker, a creature of living darkness that could phase between dimensions. This one took almost 20 seconds, mainly because Zara had to wait for it to materialize before she could hit it. By her 5th consecutive victory, the audience had stopped cheering and started staring. This wasn't just skill anymore. This was something approaching artistry. If art involved systematically dismantling things that were designed to be indestructible. Impressive. Commander Thane murmured to his aide. Most impressive. Phase 2 shifted focus to tactical problem-solving. Recruits faced simulated scenarios that would make chess grandmasters weep and surrender their pieces. The challenges were designed to have no perfect solutions, only varying degrees of acceptable failure. Zara's scenario involved protecting a civilian population while being systematically hunted by superior forces with better equipment, more numbers, and home field advantage. The simulation gave her outdated weapons, insufficient ammunition, and allies who couldn't find their own tails with detailed instructions. She won by turning the enemy's advantages against them, using their superior numbers to create traffic jams in their own supply lines, and convincing their command structure that they were fighting ghosts instead of a single human with an attitude problem. When the simulation ended, the tactical computer spent several minutes recalculating before reluctantly awarding her a score that shouldn't have been mathematically possible. How? Asked the supervising officer, a being whose species had evolved from creatures that solved puzzles for fun. I changed the rules, Zara replied simply. The enemy expected conventional tactics from a conventional opponent. I gave them chaos with a strategic plan. Phase 3 was where things got personal. Team coordination under extreme stress meant working together, while everything around you tried to kill you in creative and horrible ways. The other recruits had formed natural alliances based on compatible abilities and shared survival instincts. Zara stood alone, except for Rex, who hadn't left her side since their first encounter. Chun, Commander Thane called out. Your team assignment. I'll work solo, she replied. Negative. This exercise requires group cooperation. You'll need partners. Zara looked around at the assembled warriors, most of whom were studying their feet with intense concentration. Anyone want to volunteer? The silence was deafening. I see. Her voice carried just enough frost to lower the room temperature. Rex, looks like it's just you and me. Acknowledge Captain Chun. Awaiting orders. Commander Thane's cybernetic I-word as it focused on the unlikely pair. The android is not authorized for team participation. It's designated as your final opponent. Then I guess we'll have to skip that part, Zara said cheerfully. Rex, standard formation. We have a job to do. What happened next will be discussed in military academies for decades. The team coordination exercise pit groups of elite warriors against a hostile environment filled with automated defenses, environmental hazards, and enough surprises to keep everyone thoroughly motivated. Most teams struggled. Some broke apart under pressure. A few managed to achieve their objectives through sheer stubborn determination. Zara and Rex moved through the course like a force of nature with anger management issues. The human provided tactical brilliance and adaptability. The android provided overwhelming firepower and unwavering loyalty. Together, they didn't just complete the course. They redesigned it. Captain Chun, Rex said as they methodically dismantled their 7th automated defense turret. Query regarding tactical efficiency. Shoot, Zara replied, ducking under a plasma burst that would have removed her head from her shoulders. Would it not be more efficient to simply destroy all obstacles simultaneously? Zara paused in her systematic rewiring of an enemy drone to look at her mechanical partner. Rex, that's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Perhaps because you are merely human? Did you just insult me? Negative. Statement of fact. Humans possess limitations. Right. Zara's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Let's discuss my limitations after we finish rewriting the tactical manual. They proceeded to do exactly that. By the time the exercise ended, they had not only completed all objectives, but had somehow managed to capture 3 of the course's supposedly uncapturable defensive positions and turn them against each other. The monitoring staff stared at the displays in stunned silence. Is that even legal? Asked one technician. I don't think legality applies anymore, replied another. Commander Thane watched the replay for the 3rd time, his expression unreadable. When the final scores were calculated, Zara Chen had achieved something that military historians would later classify as theoretically impossible. The graduation ceremony was held the following day. 47 recruits had started the program. 23 remained. Of those, only 12 had achieved passing scores high enough for field assignment. Zara stood at attention as Commander Thane approached with her assignment orders. The rest of the graduates watched with expressions ranging from respect to barely concealed terror. Captain Chen, the commander said formally, "Your performance has been unprecedented." "Thank you, sir. However, it has also created what our analysts are calling classification difficulties. Your tactical methods don't fit standard operational parameters." Zara waited. In her experience, conversations that started with "however" usually ended with someone getting exactly what they wanted in ways they never expected. Therefore, Thane continued, "You are being assigned to a new position. Congratulations, Captain. You are now the Galactic Combat Division's first official anomalous warfare specialist." "And what exactly does that mean, sir?" "It means that when we encounter problems that don't have solutions, we send you to create some." He handed her the orders with something that might have been pride. "Your first assignment involves a situation that has our best strategists completely baffled." Zara accepted the datapad and scanned its contents. Her eyebrows rose steadily as she read. "A rogue AI collective has seized control of an entire star system," she read aloud. "Standard military responses have proven ineffective. The enemy demonstrates unprecedented adaptability and appears to be learning from each engagement." She looked up at Commander Thane. "And you want to fix this?" "I want you to do what you do best, Captain. I want you to change the rules." Rex stepped forward, his optical sensors focused on the assignment data. "Captain Chen, query regarding mission parameters." "Yes, Rex." "Am I included in this assignment?" Zara looked at the android who had become her partner, then at Commander Thane, who was watching the exchange with barely concealed amusement. "Rex," she said finally, "I wouldn't dream of going anywhere without you." "Acknowledged. Mission accepted." As they walked toward the transport bay, Zara reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. 3 weeks ago, she had been a laughingstock. Now she was heading into the unknown with a mechanical partner who followed her orders without question, and a job description that basically amounted to solve impossible problems. "Rex," she said as they boarded their assigned transport, "I have a feeling this is going to be the beginning of a beautiful partnership." "Captain Chen," the android replied, "I calculate a 97% probability that our enemies will regret underestimating human capabilities." Zara settled into her seat and began reviewing the mission files. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled past like distant promises of adventure and chaos. "Only 97%? She asked. "Rex, I'm disappointed in your confidence levels." "Acknowledge. Recalculating."